See, in the last class, we analyzed about microeconomics and macroeconomic introductory part. In continuation with that, now we study what is the difference between microeconomics and macroeconomics in an elaborated way. As I told earlier, economics is broadly divided into two categories. One is called microeconomics, the another one is macroeconomics. Microeconomics is a study about the individual decision making, and macro it is in an economy level. There are a lot of difference between these two. We can make this particular difference uh, in a tabular form. Before that, we should know what is macroeconomics is and what is microeconomics is. So, being a macroeconomics member, this question is very definite. What is macroeconomics will be the first question in section A, the two in from unit 2. When they ask, you answer in a 3-part. One is first you should say what is micro, and then you should go for the macro. When they ask micro, you write only micro. But when they ask macro, you should write what is micro is, and then you should write the macro. This is the difference. Suppose without saying anything about micro, if you write about the macro, means it's part of the answer only. It is not a full answer. That is why whenever we study about the macroeconomics, first we should say what is microeconomics is. What are the points to be included in this? First, we use a keyword called individual. It talks about the individual consumer or individual firm or individual industry, a particular unit. All these things, that keyword you should use in micro. So you should answer in this way. Microeconomics is a choice of an individual consumer as well as a business concerning fluctuation in the costs and services of the economy. A particular unit will be taken into account. For that, the supply demand, what will be the supply demand, how the consumer is behaving, and what are the labor input. All these things should be in a micro level. So once you said about this particular micro level, then it is easy to go for the macro level. Why? Aggregation of micro is macro. There is a difference. One is called bottom up approach, another one is top to bottom approach. Bottom up approach is micro, top to bottom is macro. Now we'll move to what is macroeconomics, and then we'll go for the difference. As I told earlier, macroeconomics is not an individual level, it is in an economy level. There we should talk about the economic growth, inflation, unemployment level, how to frame monetary policy and how to frame the fiscal policy, how the international trade will take in place, how we make globalization, how to implement the liberalization policy, and what are the reasons for inflation and unemployment. All these things studied in a particular subject, we used to call it as macroeconomics. What is the approach? It is top to bottom approach, or here I have typed as top down approach. So bottom up approach is called micro and top down approach is called macro. Now we will move to the next one. It is a difference. Now I make it in a tabular column, because in section B, if they ask just writing a paragraph, they will not do full mark. So we have to make it another. Actually, because of the space criteria, I have just made 2 columns. You add one more column. Why? Because that column only the factor which we are considering. Okay. Here the first one is about the nature. Nature in the sense, microeconomics studies the individual economic units. Macroeconomics is not the individual, it is of national economy. Then the second point is micro level. My primarily deals with the individual income, individual output, price of a particular good, all these things coming under micro. But in case of macro, we are not studying about the individual product, we are talking about the aggregate demand. And we are not talking about the individual output, we are talking about the national output. We are not talking about the individual income, we are talking about the national income. We are not talking about a particular price of a product, we are talking about general price, consumer price index, wholesale price index. All these things will be in the macro. Coming to the next point is the microeconomics focus only about a particular unit or particular industry, how that resources and scarcity will be handled, and how the price of a particular product may be discriminated. So all these things in micro, but in macro, it is not possible. We have to talk about what is the total price, how the price can be fixed. Only a system we can give. So in individual allocation of resources in a micro level, it is possible. Micro, in macro, it is not possible. You have to collect the data. What are the resources available in the economy? For that, it's a long run process. Micro is short term nature. Macro is a long term nature. And fourth one is the microeconomic account only demand and supply of a particular commodity. What is the demand for that particular product in the near future? How to produce that? So that production schedule is of micro level, but the same demand and supply discussed in macro, it is not possible because for collecting what is the aggregate demand, it will take a year. Our census is published once in 10 years. So collecting the individual income and names and other data, we need 10 years to complete. That is why census is coming in every 10 years. So micro means it is a very easy process. It's a short of nature. But macro, aggregate demand and aggregate supply is involved, and that should be conducted in a national level. So it will take long time. Next difference between micro and macro is in micro we can have a clear picture about what is happening because it is in a bigger, a particular individual is taking a decision and you know what he is and you know what he is going to take. Take a decision in micro is very easy and it is easy to project what will be the demand. But in case of macro, purpose is not the forecasting. Purpose will be how to use that particular resources in an optimum way. What is the priority? How to handle the scarcity? How to achieve the economic growth? With the available resources, what are the things that should be supplied? So macro demand forecasting is not a macroeconomic survey. In macro, that particular concept is converted into policy framework. The next difference is in microeconomics, we can give ways and means to reach the equilibrium. So, because a particular firm want to achieve, there will be a demand. So, I will increase to that level, and he will make the supply equal to demand. So, that is a possibility to achieve the equilibrium. But in case of macroeconomics, it's not possible. We try to reach the equilibrium when aggregate demand is finalized, and we try to increase the supply. But most of the time, it is not possible to reach. Sometimes that will be a surplus, right? Because one particular product will be oversupply, and some product will be scarce. So what we have to do, we try to match the aggregate demand and aggregate. We are only trying, but it will be a near to the actual. So that is why taking a decision in a macro level is very difficult, and any wrong decision will end up in a worst scenario. The next difference is individual price is involved in a micro level. So any variation in the price will not, it's a short term nature, definitely it will not be affect the economy. But in macroeconomics, yes, collecting the data about the income itself is a very big task, and it's not possible to say the variation. What is the price level in last year and what is the price level now? We can compare, but not yesterday, today, day after. It's not possible. So the primary component of macroeconomic problem is finalizing the national income. So these are the some of the difference between micro and macro. And in addition to that, you should some case study will be there. Suppose how to finalize a particular product, price of a particular product, whether it is micro or macro, you should be clear that it is micro because we are talking about a particular product. How to achieve consumer equilibrium? Once again, it talks about the equilibrium that to a particular individual called consumer. So it is a micro nature. Similarly, what is the output generated in a
individual organization, it is micro in nature, it is not macro. Suppose what is the output generated in a particular industry means, suppose sugar industry or electronic industry, then it is not micro, it is macro. So whenever we talk about what is the individual income, out of which what is the marginal propensity to save or marginal propensity to consume, all these things coming under microeconomics. So whenever we say having a sentence, then we should know whether it is micro concept or macro concept that we should. So some of the example I have given in the sheet. What are the example for macro? Suppose we talk about the national income accounting, then it is macro. How the savings are converted into investment, how to frame the investment function, this is macro. Whenever we talk about the general price level or consumer price index or wholesale price index, whenever index is used, then it is not a micro concept, it is a macro concept. Similarly, instead of individual income or individual demand or individual supply, whenever we use about the aggregation of demand or supply, then it is not micro, it is macro. Similarly, any theory related to poverty or population, it is not micro, it is macro. Rate of unemployment, it is not micro, it is macro. So you should know what is the difference between micro and macro by using the concept. The easiest example is the third one. You can see output generated in individual organization, micro. Suppose that frame output generated in the sugar industry, then it is not micro, it is macro. So finally, I'm moving to the next one is the similarities. This particular slide I have given because in the forthcoming units now, unit 3, unit 4, unit 5, this particular thing we should know. In microeconomics, there is a confined principles. These are the things. What is law of demand? What is law of supply? What is demand forecasting? All these things are micro. It is confined. What is liquidity preference theory? It is confined. But in macro, we cannot confine. Why? Because there are different views. Sometimes it will be in a district level, sometimes it will be a state level, or it may be a regional level, or it may be in national level. So the policy will change from, even if suppose government policy, the central government is having one policy, state government is having policy, and some areas the state government itself will take some decision. Why? Because the views will be different in macro. So some of the similarities that we should make is how the decisions are taken place, or what are the business cycles involved in micro level and macro level. If we understand these two particular things, then while studying the macroeconomic indicators, it's easy to understand this is macro concept and this is a way that we should approach. I will repeat one particular point. All micro concepts are macroeconomics, but all macroeconomics are not micro. So two things that we should keep in mind about the effects. Two things are, one is how decision is taken in micro and macro, and how the business cycle is reflected in micro and macro. Decision making is very easy in micro and it is very difficult in macro. Why? Because it is a short-term nature, that is a long-term nature. And it is easy to frame a rules and regulation for micro level, but it is very difficult for macro level because wide range of people are involved. Interest rate will not affect the individual level, but it will affect in the national level. A particular export is possible for individual level, but on the whole, the economy export is very difficult. Balance, what is the account balance of an individual? It's very easy to complete the auditing, but balance of payment for a nation, it's not an easy task, it's a very difficult task. So decision making is very difficult and challenging task in macroeconomics, whereas in micro it is easy. Coming to the business cycle, there are different cycles are there. An individual can easily tackle that particular because it involves only an individual demand about the personal income and a price of a particular product, and we can confine what labor input they need. It's easy to handle the business fluctuation in micro level, but it is very difficult to handle the macro level. That is why, keep it in mind, decision making and economic cycle are very different from micro and macro. With this, I'm completing the class, and tomorrow we are having the test. The multiple choice question will be there, and section A question also will be there. All of you should come in the video, dress well, and you should on your video. No excuses. And this will be considered. Today is the last day for submitting your notes. With this, let me wind up the class. Have any doubt, you can ask me. Whether you understand the concepts. Hello.
Yes, sir.
ஏதாவது டவுட் எதுவும் கேட்க மாட்டீங்களா கண்ணு? நான் பாட்டுக்கு சும்மா சிஸ்டத்தை பார்த்து பேசுற மாதிரியே இருக்கு. வெறும் ஹரிணி, பிரின்சி, ராகுல், வைஷ்ணவின்னு பேரை மட்டும் தான் பாக்குறாங்க. உங்களுக்கு இன்ட்ரெஸ்டிங்கா இருக்கான்னு எனக்கு தெரியல, நீ தான் சொல்லணும்.
இன்ட்ரெஸ்டிங்கா சார் இருக்கு.
ஆனா எனக்கு ரொம்ப போர் அடிக்குது கண்ணு, சாரி. ஏன்னா எதுவே இல்ல, முகத்தையே பார்க்க முடியல. சும்மா லேப்டாப்பை பார்த்து பேசிட்டு இருக்கீங்க. நான் எனக்கும் உன் கிளாஸ் ரொம்ப பிடிக்குது. சரி, யாராவது முகத்தை பார்க்கலான்னா எதுவும் வீடியோ ஆன் பண்றதுக்கே பயப்படுறீங்க. ஆக்சுவலா நான் தான் யோசிக்கணும், எனக்கு வயசாயிருக்கு. நீங்களாம் யங்ஸ்டர்ஸ், நல்லா ட்ரெஸ் பண்ணி நல்லா பண்ணி ஒரு வீடியோ ஆன் பண்ணி சிரிச்ச முகத்தை காமிச்சா தான் நல்லா இருக்கும். நாளைக்கு டெஸ்ட், எல்லாரும் வீடியோ ஆன் பண்றீங்க, நான் பார்க்கணும் எல்லாரையும். I want to see.
இன்னைக்கே வெப்கேம் வாங்கிடுறேன் சார். இன்னைக்கே வெப்கேம் வாங்கிடுறேன் சார், கவலைப்படாதீங்க.
ஓ, வெப்கேம் இல்லையா கண்ணு? சாரி. அப்படி இல்லன்னா பரவாயில்ல, விடு. இதுக்கு போய் காசு செலவு பண்ணிட்டு இருக்காங்க, விடு, பரவாயில்ல. எப்போ முடியுமோ அப்ப வாங்க, அவசரம் இல்லை. ஏன்னா பேண்டமிக்கா இருக்கு, வெளில போகாது. ஏன்னா என் குழந்தைகள் நாங்க எங்கேயும் வெளில இருப்பது இல்லைப்பா. இதாயிடுன்னு. யூ ஆர் ஆல்சோ மை சன். ஸோ பரவாயில்ல. ஒரு வெப்கேம் இல்ல, உங்க ப்ரொவிஷன் இல்ல சொன்னா அதை பத்தி கவலைப்படாதீங்க. வீடியோ ஆன் பண்ண வேணாம், பரவாயில்ல. ஓகேவா? பட் வாட்ஸ்அப்ல போட்டோ எடுத்து காமிக்கலாம்ல, அது பண்ணலாம்ல, ஹாய் சொல்லலாம், அதெல்லாம் பண்ணலாம்ல. பார்த்து எவ்வளவு நாள் ஆச்சு உங்க எல்லாம்?
எஸ் சார், எஸ் சார்.
அதுக்கு இன்னும் குரூப்ல அனுப்பிச்சிடாத, இண்டிவிஜுவலா இருக்கு. ஏன்னா ஹெச்ஓடி கோச்சுக்குவாங்க. ஏன்னா பிரைவேட் இன்ஃபர்மேஷன்லாம் அதுல இருக்கக்கூடாது. சரி, நல்லா படிங்க செல்லம். ஏதாவது டவுட்னா கொஞ்சம் கேளுங்க. கிளாஸ் ரூம், கூகுள் கிளாஸ் ரூம் கொஞ்சம் ஆக்டிவா வைங்க. நோட்ஸ் ஏதாவது டவுட் இருக்கா, கொஞ்சம் நல்லா படிங்க. டைம் வேஸ்ட் பண்ணிக்காதீங்க. ஓகேவா? With this we'll wind up. May God bless you, my children. Next classல இருந்து கொஞ்சம் ஸ்ட்ரென்த் நல்லா இருந்தா நல்லா இருக்கும். Okay, bye. See you. Hi. I am ending all. Put present, all of you, please. Will you type in chat box? முடிஞ்ச ஃபீட்பேக்கும் அடிங்களே. கிளாஸ் என்ன புரிஞ்சுது, எவ்வளவு புரிஞ்சுதுன்னு அடிச்சிங்கன்னா கொஞ்சம் நல்லா இருக்கும். சாட் பாக்ஸ்ல ஏதாவது டவுட்டு, அட்லீஸ்ட் அடுத்த கிளாஸ் இப்போ உடனே இருந்தாலும் எக்கனாமிக்ஸ் ரிலேட்டட் ஏதாவது டவுட்னா கொஞ்சம் கேளுங்க. எனக்கு உங்க சும்மா சிலபஸே எடுக்கிறதுக்கு எனக்கு போர் அடிக்குது. கொஞ்சம் கரண்ட் அஃபேர்ஸ், எக்கானமில இருந்து எனக்கு பேசினாதான் நல்லா இருக்கும். நீங்க இன்ட்ரெஸ்ட் காட்டணும். ரைட்? எங்க ஹரிணி, பிரின்சி, வைஷ்ணவி, விக்னேஷ், ராகுல். ஓகே, பாய். வில் மீட் டுமாரோ. எக்ஸாம்பிள் டைப் பண்ண வேண்டியிருக்கும் ஷார்ட் ஆன்சர்ஸ். சரியா? பி ரெடி.